Well, the haters gonna hate, and the fakers gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast.
I'm Jake.
Yeah. I'm Adam.
Yeah. We're here to talk about a card game that we play sometimes. It's called Dominion. Yeah.
I like Dominion.
Yeah.
I like cards.
Yeah, and this episode is going to be the first in a little sub-series that we've been thinking about doing. Basically, we're going to be talking about the thought process of comparing two cards that do similar things. So you're looking at a kingdom, and you've got these two cards, and they both do something similar, and you're evaluating their pros and cons, and what does that thought process look like. This episode is going to be focusing on villages in that respect.
Yeah, so this topic was thought up because, basically, it was a listener request.
Yeah.
So Dylan in the Discord channel basically asked for this and gave villages an example. And this is us trying to make an episode about that.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll say something coherent. Maybe.
Hopefully.
We'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
I make no promises.
I really like the idea of, taking this further as we go on, and maybe eventually doing something like, today we're going to be talking about comparing two villages, but maybe later on we talk about comparing to trashers, comparing to extra gains, maybe comparing to attacks, stuff like that. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and before we get to that, of course, last episode was about Ranger, and we had a kingdom that...
Oh, wow, it was about Ranger, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, yeah.
Sorry, I just feel like today, so...
Yeah. So Adam feels like crap because he lost a bunch of games at Dominion, and you can't blame him. But this kingdom had Ranger in it, and it had some other cards, which we'll read now.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so those cards were Fool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Island, Moneylender, Priest, Ranger, Charm, Cobbler, Haunted Woods. We had the event Borrow, the landmark Basilica, and because we had Fool, we also had Lucky Coin instead of one of our coppers. Once more for our audio-only listeners, we have Fool, Smugglers, Blessed Village, Island, Moneylender, Priest, Ranger, Charm, Cobbler, Haunted Woods. We have the event Borrow, we have the landmark Basilica, and instead of one of our coppers, we have Lucky Coin.
So we said a lot of things last time. I think I want to start with the things I said last time that I have changed my mind on.
Okay.
The first thing is the opening. I was talking about getting Fool in the opening, depending on what it was. Now, Borrow messes with the opening. So if you have a 4-3, you can get your Priest, and then you can Borrow and then get another 4 cost. But if you have a 3-4, you can actually Borrow on turn 1, and you're guaranteed to at least be able to Borrow again on turn 2 in order to get another 4 cost.
Yeah, so you can always open 4-4 here if you want to do that.
If you don't have a 2-5 or a 5-2,
yeah,
you can always open 4-4.
Right, and the 2-5-5-2 was interesting too, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But on the normal cases, which were 3-4, 4-3, you ended up settling on using your 4-4 potential like pretty much every game, right?
Right, so I had talked about Fool. I think Fool's actually really bad here. Mostly the reason for that is...
the boons suck here?
Well, I mean, boons aren't great in general.
But there are boards where they're better than average, right?
This is not a good board for Fool, though, because you have to discard a card, and the draw is super tight here, so discarding a card hurts a lot. But also, you're getting some boons at the start of a lot of your turns because of Blessed Village anyway, and so having more boons on top of that just really doesn't do much. And also, because of Borrow, that Fool could have been a 4 cost most of the time. And the 4 costs are just really good. Like, a lot of times you just want to put a Blessed Village in your deck.
Yeah, it's not so much that the Fool is a bad card, really. It's more just that you don't have time for it. Because, like, it's more, there was always something better you could be doing. And if you don't have the Fool, you could be getting a Smugglers, right? And the Smugglers is going to give you value throughout the game.
I guess.
I mean, yeah, like, you can argue, I mean, it's a terminal 3 cost. You can argue, is it the best thing to put in your deck? Maybe yes, maybe no. But, like, there's, the bottom line is there's a lot competing with Fool here. So...
Yeah, like good cards. Yeah.
Good cards, right.
Yeah. Also, last time I talked about, like, doing an opening where you do, like, Priest and maybe Blessed Village on turn 2. I don't like that as much anymore. I think opening with 2 Trashers is better. I think there's a lot of value in trashing cards because Lucky Coin is going to be giving you all those silvers, and getting thin has a lot of value because the draw is so tight. So I like now either a Priest Moneylender opening or a Priest opening. I really don't think there's much real difference between the 2 of those.
So my read was a little different. I never borrowed in the open. I always just opened Priest Silver pretty much, and then on turn 3, like in the second shuffle, I picked up a second Priest, and then shortly after picked up a Blessed Village, and then just did my thing. I mean, we ended up building a really similar deck. In general, we still disagree a little bit on how important it is to get thin really early. I just had other priorities. I was just doing other stuff, and don't get me wrong, sometimes I got burned for that, but more often than not, I just didn't have a huge priority of getting thin really early. And I don't know, I don't feel like it really burned me all that much, because there's nothing here you need to be super thin for, especially once you get the estates out of your deck. Because the real threat of not thinning enough is the Haunted Woods attack, right? That's the reason you want to get thin, is because your opponent can be Haunted Woods at you.
You want to get thin so you can draw your better cards. I don't want to draw coppers. I want to draw my villages with my draw cards. I want to make sure I get Haunted Woods in play every turn.
Yeah,
I want to find my plus buy. I want to have my Ranger token facing the right way.
The time you spend getting thin, you can just be getting more of those cards, which is higher variance. Cards? Yeah, all of the above. The Haunted Woods, the villages, the Rangers, the Priests,
so,
what have you.
Oh yeah, so this is related. So I liked putting a Cobbler in my deck for that reason.
Okay, and that's our other little point of contention. But...
Well, it's related to this because you're just advocating for a very different way of building the deck. And for that way, sure, the Cobbler doesn't seem great. But if you're going to get thin, then I think getting a Cobbler has value. Even in spite of Haunted Woods being there and sort of hard countering Cobbler. I think Cobbler is a strong enough card that it actually helps you.
Okay, the Cobbler is a good card to have in your deck for a good portion of the game. Before your opponent is playing Haunted Woods every turn. Once your opponent is playing Haunted Woods every turn,
you priest that thing.
The Cobbler becomes a liability, and it becomes a priority to trash it. But before that, yes, the Cobbler's doing really good stuff for you because it's able to gain to hand all the stuff that you want in your deck.
It doesn't take any of your terminal space, which is super tight in the beginning.
That's important.
And also, it doesn't actually take up a card because you lose one turn, but then it draws the next turn. So it's card neutral overall, which is good. And then also you get flexibility and more knowledge about what you want to gain. So if I have terminal space on this one turn, I can gain a terminal with my Cobbler. I can gain a Ranger and flip the token. Or if I need a village this turn, then I can get the village or anything like that.
Okay, so none of that's wrong, but the reason I disagree is and I will say I did get a Cobbler sometimes. I'll talk about when, but the reason I disagree, I never ended up getting a Cobbler outside of turn 1 or 2. I got a Cobbler if I opened 5-2, because the Cobbler's a really decent card. The opponent's definitely not going to be attacking me consistently at that early in the game. I can get some value out of it. The other 5 costs, though, are just really good cards that you want in the deck. You want Charms in the deck. You want Haunted Woods in the deck for sure. And so I never really found time for a Cobbler after the open, just because I had other priorities. The Cobbler, and by the time I thought that, I have enough Haunted Woods or Charms, obviously I'm getting Haunted Woods attacked every turn, so I never really found time for the Cobbler, other than opening with it.
Yeah. So there's still some disagreement here.
Yeah.
I think I'm right. I think what Jake's doing isn't as good as what I'm doing. And I say this after we just played a bunch of games, and he won more than I did. But a lot of those games were really close. First player decided a few of them. I got some bad draws. Maybe he got some bad draws. I don't know. I still like the way I built the deck more. And
sure,
whatever. I mean, I actually don't think it's that super different.
Yeah.
And I also think that...
most of the payload is silver, I think.
Well, you get it for free, so
yeah,
silver's pretty good.
The charm ends up being a really good card to pick up double 4 costs or double 5 costs.
Yeah, so as I was saying before you interrupted me to say that, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Was this actually ties into a comment that 2 separate people made. So I got a comment on the YouTube video from Shower, however you say that. And then I think it was AR Flutter actually mentioned this in the Discord. Both of these people independently were referencing that conversation we had at the end, like after the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that can lead to skill deciding games over luck, even at like all levels of play, is sometimes there's like a kingdom that is, it's got cards that I'm good with or cards that I'm bad with. And so I'm going to perform better or worse depending on what's in the kingdom or the type of deck that I have to build. Maybe I'm really good at building this type of deck or using this card to build, and maybe it's there, and maybe I perform better.
Sure.
And so, I mean...
We all have those, like, pet cards that,
jack of all trades.
Yeah, for me, things like Governor, Black Market, stuff like that tend to do pretty well with those cards, but yeah.
I'm so sorry that you have to play with Black Market. That sounds terrible. But anyway, I think that's it's an interesting point and something we didn't talk about last time. And possibly, I've definitely seen it in podcast Kingdom games. Because it frequently happens that, like, we'll both play it and we'll both kind of get used to what's going on. But then, like, once we both figure out what we like to do, one of us ends up winning, like, a lot of those games more than the other person.
Yeah.
And it's not always the same person. Sometimes it's Adam, and sometimes it's Jake.
Yeah, usually goes one way or the other at a certain point.
We are different people. And that's why.
That's a theory. But
anyway, that's all I have to say about this.
Yeah, for sure. So the other thing is, like, you come away with disagreements on this stuff, but, like, good fundamental deck building principles still, are going to carry you farther than the difference between 2 individual strategies, I think. So, and beyond that, there's individual factors that get in the way, like first player, like shuffle luck, stuff like that. So it's hard to say in the end when both the decks were competent. So
yeah, just in general, like whenever I win, it's because I played better, but whenever I lose, it's because I got unlucky, right?
Right.
And then the same for you.
Yeah, same.
Whenever you win, it's because you got lucky, and then whenever you lose,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that Kingdom. Let us know what you would do. And
I was really surprised at how good Cobbler was, because I thought it was total garbage.
On that Kingdom, you mean?
Yeah, and it turns out it's actually good. Cobbler's just such a good card.
It certainly has its strengths. I will say, like, it's a super underrated card, all in all.
I agree. I think it's the most underrated card in all of Dominion.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would.
I don't think it's a super strong card.
I think it is.
Cobbler is really good in a lot of contexts, and skipping it when you shouldn't skip it is often game losing. Because when it's good, it's really good.
Yeah.
But
that happens like all the time. It's super great.
It happens like all the time.
Yeah. This is really great.
Yeah. Anyway, so this episode's not about Cobbler though. It's about villages, and we're comparing them. We're comparing these different cards, right?
Yeah.
So, we again are going to be talking about in this, and we're specifically talking about villages this episode, but just generally looking at two sources of the same effect in a kingdom and deciding which one to go for. So when we do these, there are some common threads that we'll rehash, some general principles to evaluating two similar cards and figuring out what the best one is for your deck. But again, today we're going to be focusing on villages.
Yeah, I think it just helps to have a concrete example, because this is really abstract and difficult to talk about without an example.
Yeah.
Or even with an example. So, yeah.
So the general principles that we want to get into here are when can I gain and play the card, and when can I get that effect? So usually that's talking about the accessibility of the card, how quickly you can get it. Then you think about what will this card do for me the very first time I draw it, and you think about that as opposed to what is the long-term role of this card in my deck. So what does the card do for me right now versus do I want it in the deck, in the deck I'm eventually trying to build, and does it fit in there? And finally, you think, is the effect of the card being given to me in a way that's sustainable for as long as I'm going to need it? So those are the points we're going to cover here with these villages.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
With villages as an example.
Yeah.
So, the first one you're talking about, when can I get the effect? And, I mean, that's kind of broad. I think the most obvious application, at least in my mind, is, when you can buy it, meaning how much it costs, and how long it takes you to actually buy the card.
You typically look at a card that is more expensive and assume that it is more powerful because it costs more, and that's typically how cards in Dominion get balanced. So, you being able to get the card a little sooner sometimes means that, even if it's a worse card for your deck, it's the better card to put in the deck right now. So, let's say you've decided, Lost City or Nobles, these are, better cards for the deck that you're eventually trying to build than Shantytown is. It's good to understand that, but when you are actually playing, you have to evaluate how important it is to get that village effect ASAP. And do you need the village before you can get those cards, like the Lost City or the Nobles?
Yeah, it's really easy when I'm looking at village and farming village, and I only have $3, and I've decided I needed a village.
Right.
Well, I'm going to get the village then, because I can afford it, and, really it's a minor thing. Right, but if I can afford farming village, well, I'll get the farming. Woo! This is really insightful. But sometimes
it's harder when these things are farther apart.
Yeah, Shantytown is not a good card.
No, it's one of the weaker villages in the game.
It's a bad card.
Yeah,
and,
usually. It's usually a pretty bad card.
It's a bad card.
Yeah,
but other cards that cost more are a better card. So if I'm really desperate for that village effect and I'm willing to sacrifice all of the other things that other villages might be doing for me instead,
or the other cards, period, that you might be getting instead of this village, right?
Sure. So I guess I was kind of assuming that I've decided I want a village.
Yeah, right.
In my deck. Now is the time for a village because that's the best card for my deck.
Yeah.
Now if I've decided that, then if I'm looking at all of the different villages I could buy, maybe the more expensive ones are better, or maybe I can't afford them. That's kind of a trivial thing. But, there are other things about those villages that can make me maybe want one, or maybe they cost the same. How do I know which one's better?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes even when you do know, it can be kind of weird, because, sometimes the answer is to just not get the worst village, just wait until you have the better one, right? Sometimes the right answer is just to shove more terminals in the deck and get to the point where you can get the village that you want to have in your deck. And then other times, the village effect is so good for your deck right now that you're going to have better turns sooner and more often to maybe get more expensive villages later on down the line, or maybe not. The considerations you get here is, like, what does my deck do without that village? And how much longer is that going to be acceptable?
Yeah, I think the biggest factor, at least when it comes to villages, but really this holds for other cards, is drawing cards.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
Most villages are non-terminal. Yeah, I know. They really super are. So, like, if they draw a card, then they're a cantrip. So, like, they're not going to hurt me if I draw them. So,
yeah.
If the village draws a card, then that makes me feel a lot better about putting it in my deck, even though it's not the super amazing thing.
Right, and then we get into, but then at that point you talk about opportunity cost, right? So, like, you put a village in the deck, and then if you didn't need that village, you draw it, and it's like, oh, this could have been a second Swindler or whatever.
Or a silver.
Yeah. Yeah. So at that point, you start to think about, like, okay, if I don't have this village, let's say I'm over terminaled. How big of a deal actually is that?
Well, if you're over terminaled, that means you really want a village.
Well, sometimes yes. I mean, yes, it always means you want the village, but, like, sometimes yes. But, like, how bad is being over terminaled in that particular instance? If you're waiting to just, like, get your champion or get your plus action token on something or whatever, you know, sometimes you do just keep building. But
so in the case of villages, I think there's a specific point that, like, a lot of times when you're building a deck that wants villages in it,
yeah,
you put the terminals in first, and then you put villages in. And that actually goes into your next point about what is this card going to do for me the first time I draw it.
Yeah, exactly.
If I put a village in my deck and it's not going to help me play 2 terminals, why did I put the village in my deck? What is it really doing?
Nothing. And
if it's doing nothing, then, you know, maybe don't put it in your deck. And in this case,
right,
you know, you're not looking at a different village that's going to help you. You're probably looking at a different type of card that's going to help you.
Sure. And a lot of the decision you'd be trying to, like, make at that point is, you know, am I waiting to get the more expensive, better village, or getting the one right now? It's just evaluating how important it is to get that effect now from a card that's maybe worse on the long term. Now, the other thing is that the usual circumstance with villages, and just with any card, is that you have to choose it, and then buy it, and then shuffle it in, and then draw it. But there are other cards that can get around that assumption, and those cards kind of lend themselves to different considerations too.
So this is sort of in preparation, like, oh, I'm going to eventually build a deck that wants villages, but now I might build it differently because I have access to those village effects. Maybe a little earlier, or potentially in some cases a little later. So, like, I could buy an exploration and get my villager token right away, and I can do that, and that's great if I'm counting on that to be a villager, or maybe something a little more sustainable, like an academy, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could even, like, get less sustainable but more sustainable than, like, exploration, like lackeys, like relying on lackeys for your village effect. Like, that is considered quite a strong card for a lot of the time. Just because you can get those villagers, like, in demand right now, like, on demand. So, you know, a lot of the time it's not something you're relying on. Like, the lackeys might not be a great card to have in your deck when you're comparing it to another village, but the fact that you can get that village effect right now. Similar, you're comparing something like Ghost Town and Village, right? And those cards, like, I think the Village is just clearly a better card to have in the deck for the most part. But the thing is that the Ghost Town is something that you can foresee that you've got terminals coming up, and you can get that village right now. So it's not like you have to then draw it and shuffle it in. Even if you have decided that it's the village is the card that's better for the deck, the Ghost Town might be just better at any given time just because of when you can get the effect of it.
Okay, so when you say that Village is a better card for the deck than Ghost Town, I think you're maybe saying that, I've discovered a situation where I feel that way, and you're not saying that Village is a better card than Ghost Town in, like, every situation, right?
Not every situation. I'd say for the most part it is.
Okay, I wouldn't say that, but...
Because Ghost Town is a stop card half the time, and Village is a stop card none of the time.
Okay, that's not how it works, but this podcast, I don't think it's about that.
Sure.
We can bicker about that some other time on the Mythical Future Ghost Town versus Village episode.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll force it into some kingdom and we can bicker. Anyway, but yeah, you would get a Ghost Town among other reasons for the fact that you can get the action sooner, or maybe it's even worse because, like, I got this Coin of the Realm, and now I have to buy it, shuffle it in, play it, and then on a future turn only can I get the actions that way. So all of this kind of affects when to buy the Village, and also, I mean, yeah, when you buy the Village closer to when you're going to need it, then of course the first time you play that Village is going to be more valuable, and this is very good, and naturally this is a better way to build your deck, and the cards that can give you quicker access to this effect are going to be more powerful.
Yeah, we can say similar things, not just about Villagers on Demand, or the Village on Demand, but, like, you could say similar things about, like, Villa, too. Right?
Well, that's super fast. You get it right away.
Yeah, you get it right away, and, like, the Villa is, like, I don't think very many people would argue that Villa is a good card to have in your deck most of the time, right? It's, like, effectively a copper that gives you, buy in the Villa. But, you compare that to a different Village, it's obvious when you buy the Villa. It's when you collided two terminals. But, yeah.
Right.
The strength of it is it let you build your deck out of order, and that's...
for sure.
Yeah.
So, these are a number of things that might be going through your head. I think another big class of things that's going through your head is how good is it at doing what it's supposed to do? So in the Village case, how good is this thing at being a Village?
Okay, and would that means, like, how good is it, how many turns in a row can it do it? Or
well, that's one way. I think some Villages are conditional, so like Ironmonger or Herald. These are only going to be Villages if the second to top card from your deck is an action, right?
So consistency.
So, I mean, you can look at it as consistency. You can also look at it as these cards require support to work.
Sure.
So if I have the support, if I have a way to get high enough action density, or if I have a way of knowing what's on top of my deck so I can set it up so that these cards always hit. These are ways that you can support these cards as Villages. However, if that's not always available, if I don't have the action density yet, or if I'm not ever going to have it, or I'm not going to be able to guarantee these cards hit, then I should think about maybe a Village that will always give me that effect if I really want that effect all the time, and I can't get it from these conditional cards.
For sure, yeah. So there is this other dynamic, and Adam alluded to this earlier, which is some of the meat of when you're comparing these two cards that do similar things, but maybe have different roles in your deck over the long term. You think about, what will this card for me do for me the very first time I draw it and get to play it? And you think about that opposed to, what is the role of this card in my deck over the long term? So, like, what's the better card for me right now? What's doing a better thing the very first time I draw it versus what card do I eventually want to have in the deck more, in the deck that I want to build? Why do I say you think about these in opposition to each other? It's mostly just because sometimes you don't, but then it's obvious, right? Like, if Shantytown is a worse card now and a worse card later, you're not getting Shantytown. But I'm thinking, like, maybe you've got, like, this $2 native village and the $3 village, and they're both available. You get the native village right now, but is it, like, better than not doing it at all? I mean, like farming village versus squire is an interesting case, right? Like, I am usually most points in the game. Like, I'd say for, like, more than half of the game, I'd rather have a farming village in my deck than have a squire in my deck. But I'm sure as a lot more likely to have a squire in my deck early on than I am to have a farming village in the deck. Because, they have different utilities.
I don't know if I completely buy that. I mean, I guess I could justify putting a squire in my deck super early, knowing that I have the terminal space for it. And then maybe later on, when I don't, I could start playing it for other modes, like actions.
Right. I mean, the thing is, if you're looking at comparing it as a village to farming village as a village, you can justify putting the squire in your deck super early. So at that point, even though you would rather have something that's not a stop card in there being your village, maybe you never end up getting the farming villages because you have the squires already, right? Because they gave you value early on.
Well, maybe you'll get less farming villages.
Right, or maybe you won't get any because at that point you've got the squire support that you don't need the farming villages. It's just
it's hard for me to imagine a deck where like I'm okay with using a village that doesn't draw any cards for my sole source of village effect. Like, drawing cards is such a big deal because it allows me to add high quantities of that card to my deck and not have to worry about drawing it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Squire's a stop card. It doesn't draw me any more cards. And if I'm going to pair it with something else to give me that source of draw, like with a Smithy or whatever, like, yeah, maybe it's not a stop card by every definition of stop card ever at that point, but still Farming Village is going to be a lot better. So, like, I think I would still, Farming Village seems like a great card for that deck, and I would want it. And I would question someone who puts too many Squires in their deck, because their deck's going to be worse.
I like Squire.
Yeah, Squire likes you too, man. But yeah, draw's important. So there are there are other things that these cards can do as well, which you're talking about. Like Squire has other options. Sometimes it's not an option though. So like I'm looking at other payload components or other deck control components. So a lot of times if I'm worried about payload or maybe I want to put a bazaar in my deck that has both payload and deck control components in it. This is a nice way for me to bundle in a little bit of payload here, at least while I'm, hopefully also wanting to use that village effect, obviously, or other deck control components. I think the big one in terms of deck control components, at least for villages, is Wandering Minstrel. That actually has a real significant impact on your deck control.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at Farming Village and be like, oh, I can skip an estate, and that's great deck control. And, yeah, you're right, but...
It's great when it happens.
But, that doesn't really ever happen.
I mean, yeah. It's, in theory, it could. And
that's really only when I'm using Farming Village plus Courtyard as my source of draw. And
right.
I haven't trashed my green cards, because that's still better than doing that. We did it, guys.
We found it. You can sort of extend this reasoning to think about things like when we were doing the episode of Lost City and Cursed Village, we were talking about how sometimes taking an early Cursed Village tends to be really strong, even if you're not going to be playing around the draw to X thing that makes Cursed Village as strong as it could be. Sometimes taking one early on is good just because you're extending that same reasoning to it. It's likely to be a source of draw and access of what other villages can do, at least early on, the very first time you draw it.
That's a good example of when maybe the immediate benefit is going to outweigh the long-term benefit. Although Cursed Village can still have some value in a deck that draws other cards that way.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's better in a deck that's in the earlier stages of the game.
And so even if you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards with Lost City, maybe the first one is a Cursed Village instead, just because that Cursed Village is possibly going to do a little more for you early on.
I think in terms of villages, the last thing I'm going to look at, which I guess falls under other deck control components, is like how many actions can I actually get out of this card?
Yeah.
So like your first Crossroads is super great, right? If I'm just looking for being able to play more actions a turn, that's really good. Or like a port that just allows me to play a lot more actions.
Yeah.
I don't have to spend money on multiple villages when I can just grab the one and put it in my deck, and now I have the capacity to play even more terminals. So that's really good. But then there are other cards that are less good at it, right? They're the conditional ones, or like maybe Prince. Oh, it's so expensive, and you have to line it up before you even get the effect. Like,
right.
It's the opposite end of the spectrum here. And so you could look at that as a way of. It also kind of fits in the same spectrum of like, oh, this is how quickly I have access to that effect. Because if I can buy one card and open up my terminal space a whole bunch, then maybe I'm going to have more terminals in my deck. Well, I'm severely over terminal, but I can just throw a Crossroads in and I'm fine.
Yeah. And I think that one of the final considerations that you'd have is, when you're comparing these two cards, is the effect from one of them or both of them, is it sustainable? And at least, if not indefinitely, at least as long as I'm going to need it. So with this, I think that it's time for me to rag on the card that I think is actually the weakest village in the game. And
whatever that means.
And I don't, I mean, I don't make that statement super lightly. I don't even think it's a helpful statement. But I think Acting Troop is really terrible. But a part of it is because it plays poorly into the concepts that we've talked about up until now. It's a stop card. It doesn't draw. You have to buy it and then shuffle it in, and you have to wait for these villagers. It has no impact on really how you can build your deck until you already have those tokens. But really what's holding it back is that it's not sustainable for as long as you need that village effect. Any card that is relying on producing villagers is a resource that you're spending, and that resource runs out in the case of something like Acting Troops. So you look at cards like that and try to evaluate whether the village effect is going to work as long as you need it to. You can say similar things about like lackeys. Like lackeys is a much stronger card for other reasons, but trying to rely on it as a village effect is certainly not something you can get away with for the entire game.
So you can look at it that way. You can look at it as not sustainable. You could also look at it as requires some kind of support. So like if it's not a big deal for me to just keep on gaining and playing Acting Troops, then maybe this is fine, because by the time the pile runs out, hopefully I've done something useful with my life. And the same thing with lackeys.
Right.
Or maybe in the case of like a recruiter, I want to have more cards to trash that cost something.
Sure.
So this can be another way to do it.
Well,
so like as long as I have the support in terms of I can gain more cards, or I can gain more lackeys or whatever to get more villager tokens, then sure, that's fine. For you to use that card as your main source of village. Now, granted, I compared Acting Troop and Recruiter, and I don't think anyone here is going to say that Acting Troop is a better card than Recruiter. Recruiter's a good card, and Acting Troop is probably not as good. But, like, and yes, of course that does factor in, and I'll yammer on about that in a minute, but, like, you can look at it in terms of, is this a good card or bad card? But, like, also, that depends on the kingdom, right? If there's support for one card, but it's still bad, then, don't just say, oh, well, this is a bad card, this is a better village. It's not as simple as I'm going to give you a power ranking of every village, and I'm going to tell you if this is the best village, and if it's there, that's the one you want, and then the next best, and the next best. That's certainly not
That's just not how Dominion works. It would
If
be
you
simpler
wanted-
if it did.
If you wanted that from this episode, sorry, you're not going to get it.
Or this game. But, yeah. I mean, yeah, so there's definitely there's an aspect of needing support for it, and that is another way of thinking about it rather than it just being not sustainable. Yeah, I didn't mean to say like never buy Acting Troop. I still think it's super weak, but anyway,
If you're gonna buy Acting Troop and that's like the only way you're getting the village effect, Acting Troop is not great at that, right?
right.
That's not where the card is best used. The fact that it gives you villagers, that's really where the card is good, right?
Yeah, the idea that sometimes the sustainability being like tied to the support is sort of comes back to the idea we've harped on in the past, which is your deck doesn't need to last forever, it just needs to win you the game. And so whatever effect you're going for, will it win you the game? So we've talked about things that give you villager tokens, but you can say the same about any effect that has a mandatory trash like tied to it. So with villages, the only ones we're looking at are Recruiter and Hideout. Those are the only two villages that have a mandatory trash on them at this time. But when we're talking about other sources of effect, like when the only plus buy has a trash on it, or when the only some other effect has some mandatory trash on it, you end up asking similar questions of like, how long is this sustainable?
Sure. So that could be a reason to delay starting, in a sense, until your deck is ready to get maximum value out of this stuff. Or it could be a reason for you to start it earlier to deny those resources to your opponent in the case of maybe a card like Lackeys.
Yeah.
When it happens when I gain the card as opposed to when I'm trashing the card.
For sure.
So I guess that's another thing to think about. We talked about different villages, and we've talked about some of them being good and bad. And I'd be lying to you if I told you that it always depends on the board. Like some villages are just really good. They're so good that even in spite of the fact that there may be a little bit of anti-synergy or they don't have the perfect support, that you put them in the deck anyway because they're just so powerful. And then there are other cards that are really bad. And
that need a lot of justification to go for.
Yeah, like I would consider not going for them unless they had the support, for example.
Right, and like sometimes they're so bad of cards that like you just consider like, can I just get away without doing this at all?
Yeah, for sure.
So
like I printed out all of the villages.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna run down the list, and I'm gonna tell you the ones I think are really good and the ones I think are really bad, and just realize that I think this is subjective. Because what does good and bad even mean when it comes to a Dominion card?
Yeah.
Who knows? But at least it's a starting point. So if I'm looking for really good, really strong villages, I think Fishing Village is a really strong village.
Yeah.
Throne Room and Wandering Minstrel are really great cards for the $4 price point. Villa is a really good card, and it is a village, and it's good at being a village. It's powerful in a different way, but it's stinking good.
Villa is interesting because it's like not a good card to have in your deck.
Yeah.
But it's a good card to put in your deck.
Yeah, Villa's...
That's the weird thing, is like the part where you're putting the Villa in your deck is the strong part.
Yeah, like when the Villa is sitting there in the middle of the table in the supply, and it doesn't belong to anyone yet, that Villa is making your deck better.
Yes.
and
then once it's in there, it's making your deck worse.
It does a less good job of making your deck better once you gain it. It's kind of funny.
It's like it really nails the interview, but then like the performance is just not there once it actually shows up for work.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah.
For $5, I'm looking at probably Lost City and City if you can turn that on. Just being able to draw those cards along with the Village effect is super great.
Yeah.
And then the really expensive ones... they're all really great, but King's Court obviously is a really good card, and that's a village.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of other really good stuff. Lost Arts, I think, is just bonkers. Like, it's really powerful. All you got to do is find a terminal card that you want to play a lot of, hopefully one that draws cards, and you're good to go. And City Quarter has some really high potential. If you can get the action density, you can just draw obscene amounts of cards. So a lot of the more expensive ones and the more powerful ones in terms of villages are the ones that can help you draw a lot more cards.
Yeah.
If you are able to have a village effect and then also draw cards, usually your turn is very good.
Yeah.
And that's not super surprising. If I'm going to look for weak villages, what am I looking for? Well, there's Shantytown. How you doing? Shantytown's just not a very good card.
It's pretty weak.
Yeah. Conclave. Conclave. It's not very good at being a village. Now, it's an okay card. It's more of an economical card. It's more of a payload card than a deck control card. But if I'm going to look at how good is it being a village, at helping me play more terminals, Conclave only works on the first or second one. And Conclave number 3 just usually doesn't do it.
So, I actually haven't had that experience. I would say that, like, technically that's true. In practice, I have yet to... I mean, I shove, like, Conclaves number 3 and 4 in the deck, and I rarely have issues, like,
I have issues all the time, man.
Man.
Now, these are probably very different decks, right?
We're talking about this in a vacuum where it doesn't go, right? But yeah, I can see where you're saying, like, the big deal with Conclave is the money you're getting. Yeah. And that's its strength. Like, it's basically, it's like a cheap festival without the buy. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't draw cards. That's what holds it back for me. But, I don't know. I wouldn't call Conclave a weak card by any means.
I didn't say that. I said it's not very good at being a village. Right. And then this one, Jake's going to love this one. Nobles. I think it's a weak card. I think it's also bad at being a village. Yeah, he's gonna love that one.
I don't
think
agree
Nobles
with that.
is very strong.
Okay, so I don't agree with that. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Nobles is always strong. I think there are plenty of boards where Nobles is weak, but I think that it's usually pretty good of a card because like you have this option to. I mean, the fact that it's worth points is a big deal. Because it means that you can be building your deck in a way that's not really making it worse, because usually either draw or village is something you need at some point. And so it's something that's going to be improving your deck. The fact that you can be padding out your score without really pausing your build is really where the strength of Nobles lies. And also, it's not bad at being a village. It's a village every time when you want it to be.
It's definitely bad at being a village. If I'm playing a Nobles for actions, I'm very sad.
I mean,
that's
it's
the sad version of Nobles.
It's not where it wants to be, but like again, you usually
costs $6.
You usually either need a village or plus cards to make your deck to keep making your deck better, and the fact that you can be padding your score out while you're doing that, it's a strong option to have.
The plus cards is a much better option.
It's the one you'd prefer to use.
Yes, it's a lot better. So
depends on what else is going on in your deck.
Of course, everything depends on what else is going on in your deck, but if I'm going to put Nobles in my deck and be happy about it, I'm usually playing it for the cards. I also don't think the points are all that relevant, so there you go.
You're wrong.
Yep, you're wrong. So this was really fun. Glad we went through that little exercise.
Yeah.
Once again, just because a card is powerful doesn't mean that I actually know it.
Golem is terrible at everything.
Yeah, Golem's a bad card.
Yeah, Golem fails to be a village sometimes. I mean, it'll play cards, but like sometimes it just finds the wrong ones.
Yeah.
And your turn's just over.
Yeah, like Golem's really expensive, and that's a big problem, right?
I mean,
the potion plus the high coin cost. Big deal.
Even if Golem didn't cost potion, like let's say it costs like 5, I'd still be reluctant to pick it up sometimes.
Yeah, like the best Golem decks, like the best case for Golem, like, oh yeah, this is where Golem really shines. It's like sometimes you're playing your deck and like you're going through your turn and then all of a sudden, oh whoops, my turn's over. My deck didn't do anything this turn because Golem.
Yeah.
And Golem, he extends his mechanical middle finger at you.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's Golem.
Yeah,
Hope you wanted that.
Which is great because I mean the art is fantastic on Golem. Like it's one of my favorite arts. Yeah, it's just like this guy like pointing, like yelling
do
at
that.
this stone dude, and the stone guy is just being a stone guy. He's like, I can't say
Okay,
about
I
this.
guess I'll do that.
Yeah, no.
Sweet.
I mean, the art's amazing, but yeah, the cards are pretty trash.
Rip.
Yeah.
All right. Did you have anything else to say?
No.
Sweet. Well, hopefully this was somewhat coherent. It would be really great if you all let us know what you thought
Yeah.
about it. I mean, we did our best to answer the question posed by the listener, and we can definitely do some more specific discussion about other types of cards if this is well received.
Sure.
And if not, if you never want to hear us do an episode like this again, please don't just stop listening.
Yeah.
Just let us know. We have other episodes we're going to do.
Yeah.
Kind of like I got a request for a count recently, and I know this request is like a month old.
Yeah.
But like, you had your break and we were doing Wandering Winter episodes, and Wandering Winter had certain ones that he wanted to do, and like Jake really didn't want to be on the Minion episode, so we got that taken care of.
Yeah.
So we care. We still care about the suggestions. We're probably going to get to count pretty soon, but we care about you, the listener, and what you think.
Yeah.
And speaking of caring about you, the listener, you care about kingdoms, don't you?
Presumably.
Well, even if you don't, we've
Here's
got
the
one
kingdom.
here.
Right, yeah.
So here, I'm going to read you the cards. It's got Native Village, Improve, Shantytown, Moneylender, Nomad Camp, Talisman, Rabble, Relic, Royal Seal, Tragic Hero, and we have Inheritance and Keep. One more time for our audio-only listeners. Native Village, Improve, Shantytown, Moneylender, Nomad Camp, Talisman, Rabble, Relic, Royal Seal, Tragic Hero, and we have Inheritance and Keep.
Alright, so we have Keep, and we have 3 Kingdom treasures.
Oh, yeah.
And we have Tragic Hero that turns into treasures.
OP!
Alright, so what are we doing here?
Well, that seems okay. I'll probably put some T-Heroes in the deck.
Oh, for
Give
sure.
me some key points. Sounds
yeah, I
pretty
want
sick.
those. I mean, and the thing that it's doing in the meantime is pretty strong, too. Right? The +3 cards
Drawing
plus
cards.
buy. Yeah. And the
I love
extra buy.
cards.
Yeah. So that's good. I mean, I think that the keep points from Copper are a thing, but I don't think that means you don't get a Moneylender. I think you're probably getting a Moneylender to open.
Yeah, so I see Rabble, and I see a way to play multiple Rabbles in a turn, and that makes me want to build more.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, inheritance is a thing, right? Like,
It
oh
is
wait,
a thing.
Rabble will discard your estates if they're inherited, right?
Yes, because
Okay.
they're actions.
Okay, then yeah, you do need to build more because you can't like have estate padding and yeah. I was thinking
Right.
like the estates would like get in the way of the Rabble attack and yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really
Doesn't work.
super warm on Native Village as a counter to the Rabble attack.
Oh yeah, that technically is true.
I don't really have too much faith in that as a strategy. I would rather be building more, hoping to play like some villages and then some Rabbles to draw a lot of cards. There's plus buy here. There's copper trashing with Moneylender. There's inheritance to make your estates into something useful, and there's a lot of extra points available because of keep.
Here's the thing: what's the something useful?
Probably more villages.
Native Village or Shantytown?
Yeah, so this is why we chose this kingdom, because we looked at it, and I was like, oh, I think Native Village is just better than Shantytown at all points in the game. And Jake is like, I think Shantytown is better than Native Village at like all points in the game.
I didn't say all points of the game, but I said for most of the game for sure.
Okay. I don't think there's any instance where I would rather have a Shantytown than a Native Village in my deck.
Well, I'm certainly more likely to open with a Shantytown. I could see myself opening Shantytown Moneylender and hoping that they don't collide and I get lucky.
Yeah,
That's not a good plan.
I think it's important to open Moneylender, right?
Yeah, you open Moneylender.
I don't think you like try and get a Nomad camp and hope to hit 5 or whatever. I think that's silly. I think you want a Moneylender.
I think what I'm actually doing is opening Moneylender Silver.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to get a lot of villages, and I want to get a lot of Rabbles. And the fact that Native Village draws more than 0 cards is what's drawing me to it. I don't think that Shantytown's really ever going to draw me cards.
You might
Maybe
just be right
it will,
about this.
like, turn 3 or turn 4 if I'm lucky, but, I mean, that doesn't happen to me. So, like, Native Village draws more cards, and I think drawing cards is super important, and so I want to do it.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think you might just be right about this one.
Yeah, I gave you a lot of chances to, like, to not have this go on the podcast, and because I was, like, super confident on this one.
Yeah, I mean, you did, and...
Did you just want to throw me a bone after this last episode?
And here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So, okay,
I appreciate it, Jake. I really do appreciate it. So like, you want the Moneylender, you want to try and get 7 for inheritance pretty soon, because estates are stupid and we don't like them.
Yeah, and I mean, between Moneylender and Silver, you have a non-zero chance of doing it in the first shuffle, and then I think it's not crazy to expect to have it done by, like, turn, like, 8 or so.
Sounds roughly okay.
I mean, you have to get kind of lucky for that, right?
I mean, I'm going to be putting some silvers in the deck so that I can make that happen. You want silvers anyway. What do you think, Jake, of Royal Seal?
I think that you definitely get Relic first.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think you're going to be getting Royal Seals, but I think it's going to be late, and I don't think it's going to be because of Royal Seal. I think it's going to be because it's a uniquely named treasure.
Oh, okay, because you said Royal Seals with an S. And I'm like, I don't think I want more than one of these things.
Well,
but I'm not even sure.
You get one, then your opponent gets one, and then you think about getting another one because it's a 10-point swing.
Keep points.
I mean, that's a thing, because, like, you'll be posturing for endgame, and, like, they're... Like, it'll do... So, like, Royal Seal... What do I think about Royal Seal? I think it's a silver that has a different name on this board. And
I could top deck a Native Village, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that really you're just, like... You know, you're getting it for keep points, and... Now, Relic, I think, is more interesting to think about, because Relic is... a kind of brutal attack.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Man, don't underestimate the Relic attack. And also, keep points. So how many relics do you get? Normally, you don't, like, get so many.
I want Uno.
Oh, I want more than Uno.
I want Uno, and I think I want it before my first Rabble.
I think I want, like...
Like, my first 5, I think, is a Relic.
Yeah, sure.
And
that's not crazy.
I think I want Uno Relic, because I'm getting Rabbles after that. Or like, maybe like a T-Hero or something in between.
I want, like, 3 or 4 relics. I want to relic you every turn.
I want to relic you every turn.
I don't think you're going to do that with one relic.
I don't think you're going to do that with your face. I don't know. I didn't have a good comeback.
I can tell. But, yeah. I want more relics than you do, I think. So, Talisman.
Yes. No.
Okay. Good talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't think of anything else, really. I think you'll probably get a Talisman at some point during the game for the same reason you get a Royal Seal, just because keep.
I guess.
You're not going to not do it. The first one
really?
The first one is a 10-point
Don't you
swing.
tell me what I can and can't do. First of all, the first one is a 5-point swing. Because no one gets the points until someone gets it.
Well,
it's a 5-point swing.
Oh, that's true. But whatever. After that,
I mean, it's okay. Yeah. But other treasures are pretty good.
Yeah.
You get like gold.
The Talisman helps you get more talismans and silver. Yeah.
Anyway. Ooh, that's pretty good. Yeah. And coppers. You're gonna want those later on
to feed your Moneylender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moneylender's hungry.
Yeah, okay. So, this kingdom is going to be interesting, yeah?
Sure. It may be interesting. It could happen. You should, if you're listening to this, you should let us know what you think. How many relics would you get? And would you get what's your first 5? What would you open? Would you ever get a Shantytown?
I like your read of Relic being the first 5. That sounds right to me.
Yeah. It sounds correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because Improve is normally a pretty strong card, but I don't really see it playing here.
Well,
I could get one.
terminal space is tight early. I think there's a place for a mid-game improve.
Oh yeah, you're gonna want to get rid of that Moneylender at a certain point. Yeah. So like, yeah, turning it into something good is fine. Yeah.
Or you could...
that's how you're getting your Talisman, because you improve the Moneylender into a fiver, and then eventually you're gonna improve the improve into something.
Oh,
There's where that Talisman's coming from.
Yeah, we did it, guys. We did it here on Making Luck.
That's assuming you don't need a Nomad camp, but...
Yeah, which you probably will. But it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We figured it out. We broke Dominion, guys.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think. If you think we're right or more likely wrong about this kingdom, let us know. If you want to get in touch with us, you can leave a comment in the comment section if you're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or if you're not, you can go to adamhorton.com, and there's all sorts of ways you can contact us. Our information is on there. There's forums, Discord channel. We'd like to hear from you. I say this every episode, not because I enjoy the sound of my own voice, because, man, my voice sounds like crap today. I'm super congested.
You do seem like you're about to die.
I feel like I'm about to die.
Yeah.
But rather, I want to hear from you.
He's lonely.
I mean, lonely is definitely not what I am right now. The baby, like, I never leave him.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for listening, and we hope you come back and let us know what you think of this episode and all the stuff here on Making Luck.
A Dominion podcast.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to get a Nintendo Switch soon.
Oh, yeah. No, we were needing more raffle prizes, so that's good.
You recommended it to me like 55 times. There's only one game that I'm like really itching to play on it, and that's Mario Odyssey.
So that's the next prize, if anyone's...
Yeah.
Yeah, so things to be excited about.
Yeah.
As listeners of the podcast.
I hope I win that raffle.
Yeah.
I'll get to keep my Switch for one more week until it's a raffle prize again.
Time will tell, yeah. Yeah.